Welcome to Uncommon Sense, where we do our best to make it common again. I'm your host, Julian Ahlquist, and today I'm joined again by my older brother, Julian Ahlquist. How are you?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. Your comparison between Mary Poppins and the Blessed Virgin Mary was pretty popular. I think a lot of people enjoyed it.
Nice.
So we wanted to have you back to talk about another analogy.
Yeah, even stranger, probably.
Yeah, even stranger, but very entertaining. I read it on his blog recently. It's the comparison between Star Wars and Vatican II. Yes, take that in for a second. But yeah, you can go to Thomism.org to read about it, and I read it to prepare for this, and it's really hard to say which one I like better, the Mary Poppins one or the Star Wars one.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's great. So we're going to talk about why you decided to make this comparison. Before we do that, I want to make sure everyone is signing up for the conference this summer. So go to chesterton.org/conference, and it's happening on July 29th to 31st. But also visit Julian's blog at his website, thomism.org.
Yeah, it's not a blog. It's a website. It's
right.
a full-on website.
It's a full-on website, yeah. And it has a great many things, like the Mary Poppins thing is there, and a lot of other stuff that we can talk about in other podcasts maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so before anything, what is Vatican II? Treat me like I know nothing about this. What are we referring to when we say Vatican II?
Yeah, so real quick summary, just obscenely quick, is when it comes to the Catholic Church, it's probably the most important event in the 20th century. It happened from 1962 to 1965. So it's a big ecumenical, which means general or even global council of basically all the Catholic bishops in the entire world, including the Pope, coming together to figure out what the church should generally do in response to all the big changes that were happening in the modern world at that time, more or less. There's been about a little more than 20 councils of this kind throughout the history of the church. Famous one was the Council of Nicaea. Maybe you heard of that. Council of Trent, that's another famous one. There was the First Vatican Council, which happened in the 1800s. And then, of course, Vatican II, which is technically a continuation of Vatican I, but a super delayed continuation. So yeah, big changes in the church happened after Vatican II because of it, for better or for worse. Mm-hmm. And I'll get into some of those details when we talk about Star Wars.
Yes. So it is somewhat of a controversial topic. I know that, even within the Catholic Church and outside of it even. Oh, yeah. But when we talk about the comparison between Star Wars and Vatican II, we're talking about the council, and we're talking about the history, the events surrounding it too. So there'll be some comparisons there.
Right.
So first question, what is Anakin Skywalker? We'll start with the main character.
Yeah, so Anakin is central to all this. Now, I guess people might be wondering, when I say Star Wars, what do I mean by that? So,
oh yeah, that's a good question too. Yeah.
I'm talking about the original trilogy and, for better or for worse, the prequels. Okay, so we're talking about episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'm not going to include the other stuff.
The Disney
I'll
stuff.
Have maybe more to say on that later, but probably not.
Yeah, but you wrote this before the Disney movies
I wrote
came
this
out.
like shortly after Revenge of the Sith came out. So
yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Anakin Skywalker, he exists throughout all these movies. And Anakin Skywalker himself is the Second Vatican Council. He embodies it. What? Yeah,
whoa.
Okay. So Anakin Skywalker, he's the chosen one in the movies, right? There's prophecies about him. He's going to bring balance to the Force according to the Jedi prophecy. He's going to make a bunch of changes or something. And of course, things go kind of out of hand with him in various ways. So same thing you could say with Vatican II. Don't worry. I have I'm gonna make you wonder what my conclusion is in general about Vatican II.
Yeah, and be careful. And there are certain things that we're not saying right now. We're not saying that the council went evil or anything like that.
Or did it? I'm going to make it more mysterious.
Yeah, so tune in. Yeah, make sure you watch to the conclusion. Mm-hmm. Also, at the end, we want to address one thing that is actually produced by Disney, The Mandalorian. Yeah, because that was popular recently, and you might have seen it. So what does the Mandalorian represent?
Yeah, so the Mandalorian stuff, which I've done very little with, is not included on my website. So this is premium content.
That's true. Yeah. So you have to watch or listen to the very end to figure out what that is.
I don't have a lot on it, but still.
Yeah.
All right. So so Anakin Skywalker is Vatican II.
Okay, great. So let's kind of go chronologically. So we'll start with the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
What is Qui Gon Jinn?
Yeah, Qui Gon Jinn. He represents a pope, namely Pope John the 23rd. So John the 23rd, he's the pope that actually began the council, just like Qui Gon Jinn began training Anakin Skywalker. He found Anakin and began to train him, right? But in the midst of the council, Pope John the 23rd dies, just like Qui Gon Jinn prematurely dies.
Mm-hmm.
And so they start these projects and do not finish them.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense so far. So then now we'll go to ObiWan Kenobi, and he's a major character. So who is ObiWan Kenobi?
Yeah, ObiWan Kenobi is the next pope, Paul VI. All right, so Paul VI, he carries on the council, brings it to completion, just like ObiWan Kenobi carries on Anakin's training because of the death of Qui-Gon. And they're both this Pope and Obi-Wan, they're kind of very kind-hearted, holy individuals. But a lot of people say about both of them that they were a little clueless as to what was going on behind the scenes with their respective projects.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense too. Actually, there's going to be another comparison made with Obi-Wan that I really like. But before we get to that, who is Emperor Palpatine or Darth Sidious? Because he's also kind of in all the movies as well.
Yeah, he kind of is. So he's kind of modernism/liberalism. Okay, so modernism, that can be a broad term. One thing is that, well, it's I don't want to get too complicated, but modernism kind of has to do with relativism, and it was condemned in a specific way by a previous pope. But Palpatine, somewhat iconically in Revenge of the Sith, says, "Oh, good is a point of view, right?" And so modernism, especially within the church, tried to make things a little bit more relative and kind of veer away from the traditional understanding of doctrine.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. I think that makes sense. Yeah. I think you can understand the fallacies that that appear in contemporary life. But
also, in terms of like left versus right in this case, he's definitely more of a left-leaning figure.
Actually, that's a good segue into the next analogy. Actually, so what's the Trade Federation?
Yeah, the Trade Federation is sort of the opposite. They're more right-leaning symbolically. So they kind of represent capitalism. So Palpatine's more socialist. The Trade Federation is more capitalist. I mean, it's a trade federations and it has trade and all that. You could also say neoconservatism too. But there's eventually a war, of course, between the Republic, which is headed by Palpatine, and against the Trade Federation, which is also headed by Palpatine in the shadows, right?
Ooh. Yeah. There you go.
And, a lot of people say this, but, like when it comes to the church, the left and the right are kind of both wrong.
Yep. And we've talked about that with Catholic social teaching, Rerum Novarum. That's definitely the point of view that the church has taken and that we're taking. Yeah. But that's pretty good. I mean, so going to the next one, the Clone Wars pretty clearly then are the war between conservatives and liberals.
Yeah, the Clone Wars. Yeah, good. Is the war between conservatives and liberals, and how it's this manufactured dispute by sort of a single evil entity, and it's just a distraction for evil to try to gain more power and to distract the good guys from the primary purpose of what they should be doing.
Yeah. Cool. That's great. Okay, so this is probably one of my favorite parts is General Grievous. So General Grievous, if you remember in the third movie, he appears and he's this kind of cybernetic creature. He has some organs, but he's mostly robot, right? And so he was the leader of the Trade Federation at that point in the war. He was a big general. So who does General Grievous represent?
Yeah, so this might be a stretch, but it feels right. He's eugenics, the sin of eugenics. Okay, so he's like this skeletal, multi-limbed, goat-like cyborg, kind of like the satanic idol to whom devil worshippers sacrifice their children, right? And at one point, he kind of sacrifices his whole ship just to kill some Jedi. He ejects all the escape pods so they can't escape and dooms the rest of the crew. Although the rest of the crew are probably mostly robots, but still, whatever.
But yeah, and so he represents contraception and abortion and
right.
all.
Yep.
Yeah.
And of course he's eventually killed by
ObiWan Kenobi.
who again is Paul VI, and Paul VI wrote the famous encyclical Humani Vitae, which condemns contraception and all that, and deals it a sort of mortal blow.
That part is my favorite because I remember a lot of people. I don't remember, but I've learned that a lot of people wanted that Humani Vitae to endorse contraception,
right,
and be like, oh, finally the church, we can do whatever we want and we don't have to worry about anything,
yeah,
even though that wasn't even true with the contraceptive materials at the time.
Yeah.
But regardless, the Humani Vitae didn't do that. It actually defeated the whole idea.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's pretty awesome. Okay, so the next one is the Jedi Council.
Yeah. So the Jedi Council. I don't know. To me, when I first saw the Jedi Council in the first episode, I was hyped up for it, but then they turned out to be very dull, right?
Very
stiff,
dull.
Yeah, stiff, rigid, frankly, quite boring.
And they said no to everything.
Yeah, exactly, right. They were just disappointing, spiritless, affectionless dullards, as I put it. Okay, so they really, and you can even see this in the original movies, but they really are suspicious of just emotion, of just, you could say, like, human nature in general, just a little bit too much so. Right? They don't just say, be careful about managing your anger, fear, and even love for other human beings. They basically just kind of condemn it. And even if they don't actually completely explicitly condemn it, it really sounds that way, right?
Well, but they do condemn anger. I remember they say hate leads to anger, which leads to, I don't remember the exact, hate leads to anger, which leads to pain, which leads to suffering, or something random like that. But they definitely don't like anger. Anger, it's very important that people, Catholics specifically, know this, that anger itself is not a vice. Right. Wrath is the kind of illicit anger or excessive anger.
Yeah,
but there is such a thing as rightful indignation. And
in fact, it's a vice to lack anger sometimes. Actually, there's certain situations where you should be angry.
Yeah, and Jesus demonstrated this. He's thrown over the tables in the where is it, the
temple.
The temple. That's I can.
And so this, I would say, is what, like, the pre-Vatican II church, at least sometimes in some major areas, kind of fell victim to, that they were a little too condemning of just human nature in general, of a little too paranoid about the emotions, and a little too quick to say, oh, that's a mortal sin, that's a mortal sin, that's a mortal sin, and just being very, very, very rigid. I mean, a lot of people will say that about the pre-Vatican II church,
right?
And you kind of see that played out here with the Jedi Council.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. On that note, Mace Windu, who's on the Jedi Council, who does he represent? He's kind of the leader of the Jedi Council.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's just kind of the most typical version of this. Very rigid. Stickler to the rules, and but then he, ironically, when he finds out Palpatine's evil, right? He just goes against that. Basically, he's saying, like, no, we can't have due process here.
Yeah, Anakin's like, it's not the Jedi way, and he's gonna kill him.
Right. So that's the typical, like, a rigid person who turns out to be a hypocrite, right? Yep. And it just drives people crazy. It's like you emphasize all these rules, and now you're breaking them, right?
Yep, exactly.
And so that's you could say is the final straw for Anakin. It's because of Mace Windu, interestingly. And that's where things go really bad.
That leads into Darth Vader, because right after Mace Windu plummets to his death, Anakin becomes Darth Vader.
Yeah.
So who is Darth Vader? Because remember, in the movies, there's kind of a difference. He becomes a new person, and we say Anakin is dead, even though he comes back. But Darth Vader does not identify as Anakin. So who is Darth Vader?
Yeah, right. So Darth Vader is, you could say, the so-called spirit of Vatican II. All right. So after Vatican II, a lot of people wanted to experiment and go in all sorts of crazy directions, saying like, Vatican II says this. Well, they technically didn't. Well, it's in the spirit of Vatican II. Vatican II, said some stuff, and they're talking about, things should change or something. So therefore, we're going to do these crazy liturgical dances or something. All those famous stuff. So Darth Vader is the mask of Anakin, just like the so-called spirit of Vatican II is the mask of what the Vatican documents actually say.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and of course it's evil too. This so-called spirit, not the true spirit, obviously.
Right, exactly. Yeah. All right, and then that leads us to Luke Skywalker. And by the way, we're skipping some characters, and you can read about it on the post if you go to tomism.org. We don't have time to go through every one of them, even though we're making good time. But and feel free to talk about any other ones that we don't at the end. But I'm going into the main ones. So let's talk about Luke Skywalker, who's kind of the other main character.
Yeah, big time.
Who is Luke?
So Luke Skywalker is John Paul II, Pope John Paul II, to be clear.
Yeah.
All right. So Pope John Paul II, the new Pope, the witness to hope, etc. So he is So John Paul II was known to be a Christian humanist, right? So humanism can have a bad connotation, but it can also mean this neutral connotation, namely emphasizing the goodness of human nature, including like emotions. Now, Luke starts out as very emotional, perhaps too much so, and kind of in sort of an annoying way. But he's eventually brought to balance, and of course he sees the goodness in Darth Vader, or you could say Anakin, and he recognizes there's a true self to him that's been forgotten and that needs to be brought back eventually.
And Luke would be someone, even when he is kind of perfected in the movies, it would be someone that the Jedi Council would not have liked his way, because remember Yoda, guess what, he uses anger, and that actually helps him defeat Darth Vader.
Very interesting, right?
But yeah, the Jedi Council would not have been approving of Luke Skywalker. We know that. I mean, he would have been too old, for example, this arbitrary rule that obviously there are exceptions to. And so we know that those types, that what the Jedi Council represented, the kind of unfeeling older Christians or Catholics, they would also they didn't like John Paul II at first. I mean, they probably are gonna renege on that when he's a saint now.
when it's far, past enough.
And he's officially a great saint. So, but that's I thought it was an interesting point. Okay, and then we have Princess Leia.
Yeah. So first of all, Amidala. So Padme. She's the pre-conciliar church. Especially in Phantom Menace, where she's all dressed up with the makeup. The smells and bells of like the old mass. I guess I don't know. Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, but then she dies, right? Just like a lot of people say, the church basically died with Vatican II. It's like, okay, so no, but
yeah.
But eventually, we get Leia, who's obviously the at least spiritual successor of Padme. And so she's the post-conciliar church, and she starts off, I would say, as a very almost sort of too much of a feminist, but she eventually throughout the original trilogy kind of softens her edges, I would say, just like perhaps you could argue that feminism just emerged with sort of with a rage after Vatican II. And then hopefully we'll see kind of
to give the whole story, in a way they were filling a hole, because the men were not being men. They were not living up to their role at all.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, good point.
I mean, Luke was a baby at the beginning. Yeah, right. but I mean, he stepped up eventually. Okay, good. And then after that, there's Han Solo. They meet Han Solo.
Yeah, I would say Han Solo is the laity, right? The layman. So he is sort of an outsider. He's not, involved in like this high-minded stuff like the Jedi or, I guess royalty or whatever. And obviously there was a lot of people falling away from Catholicism after Vatican II, and Han Solo, when he hears about the Force, he's like, it's just a hokey religion, blah, blah, blah. He's also at odds with Leia, in other words, the laity being at odds with the church. But eventually things work out, largely thanks to Luke and whatnot, that Leia and Han eventually come together and, of course, become romantically involved. And part of Vatican II was getting the laity more involved in the church. There was... Not
romantically, but yes.
But symbolically, sort of song of songs.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But the... pre-Vatican II, there was, as many people would say at least, there was the lay congregation and then the priest, and a big division in between the two, like between clergy and laity. Yeah. Too much so that Vatican II wanted to kind of fix a bit.
Yeah,
and now,
exactly.
Did it go overboard? Yeah.
Obviously, yeah.
But there you go.
I think you can explore the fan fiction of Star Wars, or that was canon, and they kind of their relationship is rocky at a few times, but that is kind of deep lore. Okay, so next, I remember in New Hope, they all meet, and then they go to the Death Star, unintentionally, but they arrive at the Death Star. Now, what is the Death Star?
Yeah, so that's a pretty important image there, Death Star. So the Death Star is the culture of death. Okay, so the culture, it's this entire world bent upon universal conquest, and also bent upon the murder of millions of innocent people, right? Especially with Alderaan, which is a completely defenseless planet, but they destroy it anyway. It's like a perfect image of abortion, especially with Obi-Wan Kenobi sensing the death of the people on Alderaan. Millions of voices suddenly cried out and were suddenly silenced. Abortion. And of course, Paul VI experienced the surge of abortions everywhere in the world.
Okay, so switching topics a little bit. I originally didn't have him, but he's a very, very popular person in Star Wars.
Yeah,
Boba Fett.
We're going to do Yoda, right?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to do Yoda first?
Yeah, let's do Yoda first.
Okay. So Yoda, Luke meets Yoda after the Death Star blows up. Next movie.
Yeah.
Who is Yoda?
So yeah, Yoda is basically church tradition. Now you could say maybe partly sacred tradition, as in the unchanging parts of tradition, but also maybe mixed in with a little T tradition, perhaps maybe even more appropriately, little T tradition. I don't know. But so he's a survivor of the Jedi massacres. He obviously knows the traditions of the Jedi. Luke goes to him to learn the traditions of the Jedi, and with that, Luke kind of gains more of a balance between his, basically his humanism, his emotionality, and something, a little more profound and spiritually important, you could say, right? But you could say Yoda by himself is lacking something.
Yes, and
right?
I like that too. I mean, I like this whole analogy, but remember, Yoda did tell Luke to not confront his father. Yeah. And he was wrong about that. Luke figured out.
Arguably right the first time, but then wrong the
exactly.
second time.
Yeah. I mean, the second one, when Yoda's dying. But he's like, no, Darth Vader is beyond saving.
Yeah. Is irredeemable, right?
Yeah.
The Second Vatican Council, irredeemable, right?
But Yoda in general is really good because we need tradition.
Exactly.
And he was part of the first council. So the guidance of tradition was still there, but he couldn't take on the hypocrisy by himself and stuff. You could tell Yoda was a little bit kind of coy. I mean, he was always kind of smiling and stuff, as opposed to Mace Windu, who's just like just dour and
humorless,
stuff. Yeah. But anyway, it was so you were saying,
and he's very isolationist. You could say a lot of traditionalists want to just isolate themselves, and sometimes that's a good thing. But you can also say with Luke's aunt and uncle, they're kind of in the same vein in a similar way. Good. But that
covers Yoda, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, this is my other favorite part. What is R2D2 and C3PO?
Yeah, so R2D2, I would say, is sacred scripture. So, he sort of contains the plans to salvation, basically, right? So R2D2, contains the Death Star plans that lead to its destruction. Right, so just sort of the necessary information, data that will, save us. I don't have that much on R2D2.
Well, no, I mean, it's paired with C3PO.
Oh, C3PO, yeah. So C3PO, I would say, is the magisterium. So the magisterium of the church interprets scripture. It's like C3PO interprets R2. And, he obviously he knows a lot. He can be a little annoying, I know, to some people.
Yep.
But yeah, R2D2 and C3PO are both throughout all 6 movies, with the exception, I think. Well,
no, they're actually in all of them.
Yeah, they're in all of them, right?
It's Yoda who's not in all of them.
Yeah.
He's not in the 4th one, but and also basically the Emperor, but they're there in spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense that tradition disappears maybe briefly.
Yeah, right, exactly. But yeah, and I love those. It just makes sense that C3PO is the one who keeps interpreting R2D2. Yeah. All right. Well, that covers all the ones that I wanted to hit. I just obviously the defeat of the Empire is the defeat of modernism.
Well, what about Boba Fett then? Going back.
Oh, right. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, Boba Fett.
All right.
Who's Boba Fett?
So Boba Fett and Jango Fett, maybe there's a symbolic distinction between the two, whatever. I would say represent radical individualism. All right. So radical, individualism is a broad term, but if we're talking about radical individualism, we're talking about sort of a philosophy of just following your own selfish, very egoistic desires. Oftentimes without any reference to good or evil, as in maybe you just stick to your own code or whatever. Boba Fett, who's a bounty hunter, is living a very individualistic lifestyle. He doesn't kind of pledge allegiance to any authority. It's all about him. He just, wants freedom to choose whatever he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't really care if he steps on other people's toes, obviously. I would also say Nietzsche would be something. Well, he was a radical individualist, and Nietzsche, was a philosopher that a lot of people have a sort of a dark, weird, irrational attraction to. Same thing with Boba Fett.
Good.
I admit I have that.
Yeah.
And Nietzsche, of course, had a very pathetic life, even though he's all about the Ubermensch, the Superman, about gaining power.
Oh, that's funny.
And living by yourself. But then in Boba Fett, at least in the movies, Boba Fett really doesn't do anything.
He doesn't do anything.
And yet he's so cool. It doesn't make any sense. And Nietzsche also in his own life, in his personal life, was just pathetic. He just lived a completely pathetic, sad, weak life. But you read his writings and it's like, oh man, this guy's crazy, but seems like a BA.
Yeah, he's Boba Fett's not only pathetic, but the way he dies, he just gets shot by a stray thing. I think Han Solo accidentally shoots him.
Yeah, exactly.
Or no, he gets his jetpack hit and then he just falls into the Sarlacc pack. Yeah, and then gets eaten.
Yep, big time. Now, of course, Boba Fett's awesome in The Mandalorian. We'll get to that later, but
well, that actually covers everything. Before we talk about The Mandalorian, is there anything else you needed to hit?
Well, yeah, Stormtroopers. So yeah,
right.
Stormtroopers, at least clone troopers, but whatever. They sort of represent the opposite of individualism. You say conformity. You could even say socialism, maybe. Even though they're clones of Jango Fett / Boba Fett. So you could say individualism somehow leads to just radical conformity. If you're all trying to just be completely independent, it's almost like it paradoxically ends in homogeneity.
That makes sense.
It's what I've noticed. I can't articulate why exactly off the top of my head, but that seems to be.
But yeah, we see that in the culture. Everyone saying "be yourself," and then everyone thinks the same thing. Mm-hmm. At least in the certain circle, it's amazing. Yeah. It's completely conformity. Okay, that makes sense. And then, I like. I was just thinking about the droids with the Trade Federation, how the capitalist model really forgets to think about the humanity of people.
Oh yeah, they just want to automate it.
They just want to automate it. Yeah.
Good call. I never thought of that.
But yeah, anyway, so is there any other character that we missed?
Yeah, but that's good enough. I get. Well, Jabba the Hutt is basically sort of just worldly hedonism or something. Yeah, whatever.
Makes sense. Kind of enslaving the laity.
Exactly.
Solo.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big time. But anyway, in the end, the defeat of the Empire is the defeat of modernism / liberalism / just maybe just all the modern ills ever. No, possibly not, because there's a sense that the Empire does continue, as we see with Disney at least.
Yeah. 2 seconds later.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. But so Darth Vader in the end is converted by Luke. Becomes Anakin, and he throws the Emperor Palpatine off into a pit, right? So he actually destroys the big evil that was lurking throughout this whole saga the whole time. Just like, hopefully, or maybe some would argue in a seminal degree already, that the Vatican II, even though a lot of things about it went awry, it did, or is at least starting to succeed in what it was supposed to do. Now, of course, a lot of people would argue with that, but at least that's what Star Wars says.
And by the way, I think I had to say the same thing with Mary Poppins, but this is not the be all and end all. It doesn't mean that everything in Star Wars is I don't even know what to say, canonically true. It's not necessarily all good messages. I know that people got into a hubbub about Obi-Wan saying only Siths deal in absolutes, and it's like, okay, clearly George Lucas didn't know what he was saying. It was not they were not trying to convey a message that, oh, well, we deal in absolutes. Does that mean we're bad people? No, that's, I think George Lucas was writing the script to Star Wars 3 in a rush. They'd already started building the productions, the sets before he had finished the script. That's a true story. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that, liberalism/modernism, despite its sort of relativistic tendencies, become absolutist, maybe, ironically.
Okay, yeah. Actually, yeah. That's true.
In a really annoying way. And that's the only thing I'll sort of try to say about that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. But anyway, we didn't want a backlash, an unnecessary backlash there.
Yeah.
So, then Darth Vader. We shouldn't probably mention that Darth Vader becomes Anakin again. Yeah, I think you said that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I said that.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So yeah, the original purpose of the council is eventually put into practice. You see at least some of that nowadays, right? Right, people?
Yeah. Okay, good. I think that's everything before we want to talk about The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so if you haven't seen The Mandalorian, this might not mean a lot to you, but you should see it. It's a good show. And The Mandalorian is this. Well, you can explain, right?
Yeah. I mean, spoiler alert. If you've seen The Mandalorian, I won't explain it.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, then don't watch this portion, I guess. I don't know what, but anyway. So Mandalorian's the only good Star Wars Disney thing that has been produced.
Yeah, and
so
what do you
far.
know? It was made by Jon Favreau, who directed the first Marvel movies.
Bingo.
Yeah, he's so good.
Yeah. So The Mandalorian. All right. So the title character, Din Djarin, Mando. So The Mandalorian represents Jordan Peterson. What? Yeah, you heard me. Strangely specific, I know. And I might be wrong. I haven't put too much thought into this, so I might change my mind 5 minutes later. But so Mando is an outsider in many ways. He has some dealings with the Empire, but sort of grows to hate them. And little by little, he starts to ally with himself with the Republic and the Jedi and whatnot. But really, he's an outsider to sort of both sides. Jordan Peterson, likewise, is an outsider in many ways, too. He began very much as sort of an adherent to typical secular modern thinking, even sort of an anti-religious atheist at one point, but gradually sort of turns little by little around and starts to embrace Christianity to, more and more degrees. Both, live sort of by a code. This is the way, 12 rules for life, etc. And so that connects to the other character, namely Baby Yoda or Grogu. All right, so obviously there's a Yoda comes to mind, obviously.
Yeah.
And Yoda, of course, represents church tradition. And after Vatican II, church tradition is sort of in a very fragile state, you could say, but nonetheless has, great sort of latent power, as we see with Grogu, who still, has the Force and everything. And Mando becomes the unlikely protector of Grogu. He's first out to kill him, but is won over by him. Likewise, Peterson, sort of by default, was sort of against Christianity in his earlier life, and in his secular days, but eventually becomes this unlikely protector of sort of Christianity's heritage. And both Peterson and Mando sort of suffer greatly because they're defending this thing. And
not only Christianity but Catholicism. Jordan's on record saying Catholicism might be crazy, but it might be the only thing that works. Something along those lines, he says. Yeah. It was the same talk where he tries to quote G.K. Chesterton, and he does a classic misquote, but it's still good. Still, yeah. There's our Chesterton connection, by the way. He's done a couple of podcasts and talks with Stephen Fry, who is a Hollywood actor, and he is a big Chestertonian. He's a big Chesterton fan, and he's in the same talk as with Jordan Peterson. He's quoted Chesterton. So
that's right. Yeah, I saw that. And then one other thing about The Mandalorian is that there's a character who shows up, namely Boba Fett. Yep. Okay, so Boba Fett, who's also a Mandalorian, was first sort of at odds with Mando, and then they kind of had this unsteady alliance. But Boba Fett, is still really shady, and especially in that post-credit scene, it shows that he's still kind of evil.
Yeah, but it took Mandalorian to make him cool, just like it took Jordan Peterson to make Nietzsche cool. I mean,
but a little bit, yeah. But Jordan Peterson, he quotes Nietzsche a lot. So it's like, why would he do that? And it says like, so like Nietzsche was this shotgun that says whatever he feels like, and sometimes he does say things that are true, and if you only focus on that, you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But then he just, says insane things. But yeah, so we, the unlikely alliance with Mando and Boba Fett, same sort of thing with Jordan Peterson and Nietzsche. And also Jordan Peterson has espoused at least some level of individualism. And again, maybe you could say some individualism is good, depending on what you mean by that. It's a vague term. Obviously, there's kinds of radical individualism that's bad. But anyway, Mando is, a little rough around the edges. And you could say Jordan Peterson is as well, at least philosophically and theologically. But there you go.
That's good. And then at the end, they do part ways.
Yeah, that's right.
They don't stay together.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Boba Fett is doing his own thing or whatever.
That's right.
But yeah, that is a very convincing argument. It might not be relevant in a little bit. I know the Star Wars and Vatican II one will stay around for a while.
Hopefully, yeah.
There might be another person that Mandalorian represents better, but that's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I think that covers everything. That was awesome.
No problem.
Yeah. Well, everyone in the comments, at least on YouTube, tell us what you think about this. Let us know if you have any other comparisons that we missed. But also read on Thomism.org, Julian's post.
Yeah, and I guess one thing is that again, did George Lucas intend any of this? Probably not.
Probably not.
The only thing I'm thinking of is that he lived through that time. So was he indirectly influenced by these events? I mean, he wasn't a Catholic, but he at least grew up sort of a Christian. So was there indirect influence? I don't think that's implausible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But there you go.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for giving this. It's just awesome and creative.
No problem.
And thank you all for listening. Until next time, help us to make uncommon sense more common.